I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and enneagram ninja.
Hello.
Boss.
Hey.
We have had a little interlude there for Star Wars Day.
Yeah.
Now we're back on it with our tools. There was a YouTube release that popped up in my feed that was Star Wars Enneagram, and somebody had done a video. I was like, "Oh,
fun!
Let's see if they quoted us."
Uh-huh.
Their entire list was very different than ours.
I am not surprised to hear you say that.
Nope. Jump to the end. Luke Skywalker was a 9 on their list, and I was like, "Nope, not for me."
No.
Moving on.
He runs toward the fighting. Like runs.
Trying to make peace with his dad. I don't know what it was. Anyway, always like Star Wars. So for those of you who are into that, I might try and do the rest of those and throw them up on our movie typing feed here this May.
Sure.
Or you can just wait till next year. Next year we'll probably release Princess Leia and just call it a day.
There we go. Perfect. Love it. God, that was like 5 years ago.
Seriously. Yeah. We're newbies, but like you can kind of tell too.
Yeah, we're new at what we're doing.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
This is, we got a rhythm. You got some muscles, podcasting muscles now between you and me.
Yeah. See, this is one of many reasons that I don't listen to back issues.
Nowhere do I get more self-critical than when I hear myself.
One of many reasons to not listen to previous episodes.
Reread books I've published.
Bad idea. Bad idea. Never reread books you've published. What are you talking about?
Look through your high school yearbook. I mean, all these sorts of things that just will take you into some dark places. Speaking of getting out of dark places, this is where we're going to wrap up our tools series. I have been fascinated by this idea, and I've longed to record on it. It's the I'm stuck in my stress number. What do I do side of things?
Yeah,
and this can be quite common. You're not alone if you find that you've actually just decided to create a little shanty in your stress number and just replete with your high school yearbook and maybe some alcohol and books you wrote that nobody read. So
seeking out control that you never really wanted before, and demanding people pay attention to you, and I feel like also in a like quote unquote post-COVID world, we're all just at least a little bit closer to our stress number than we ever have been before. And it's a lot easier to get stuck there now. The world's on fire. COVID happened. Things are nuts, man.
There is a fantastic series by the fine folks at CNN called The Decades, in which they go through each of the decades and they do one episode on music and one on TV culture, one on movies, and then a bunch on like kind of the big events. And I was talking with one of TJ's coworkers, Karen, who's been on our podcast, I suppose. And both of us were saying when we got to the 2010s, it ends with 2019, 2020.
Sure.
And both of us were experiencing major, post-traumatic
PTSD,
stress
watching
this. And I think it just lingers. Everything moved so fast and everything moved so slow at the same time.
Yeah.
COVID's an accelerator, as many have pointed out, and yet we weren't doing anything.
Right? Yeah.
The world is happening to us, apparently.
And it just broke our understanding of time.
Right?
Yeah.
something about, I mean, that's just one of many instances. All of us have all the things that are going on in all of our lives, and many of them might be very specific and quite troubling and hard. And yeah, you go into your stress number. Stress numbers, let's talk about stress numbers just to start us off. As you and I have said, stress numbers aren't necessarily bad.
Right.
Given our type, talk about what's actually the good thing about falling into your stress number.
Well, for one thing, it keeps you alive. Like the stress, the things you get at your stress number are things that are there literally for your survival. We talk about falling into stress because we envision it like a net beneath a trapeze artist. Like it's the thing that stops you from dying when you fall. And there's so much there that is part of our sort of armor, our protection, our ability to get through stressful situations that like we wouldn't have made it as far as we have in our lives if we didn't have our stress number. Mm-hmm. And there are qualities there. It's very different for all the types. Like we can't say monolithically like this is the thing you get at your stress number because it's different for every type. I need some things that Jeff does not need when he's in stress, etc. And so when we fall into this stress place, there are tools there. There's a bug out bag. There's some emergency rations. Like there's some things there that are going to keep us alive while we are there so that we can get back to a more centered place.
Thing that was hitting me recently, I would love to float this, with the exception of 4s and 5s. Everyone, when they move into their stress number, is shutting down their intelligence center, which means they're shutting down that avenue through which they receive the world.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense that if you're stressed out, you just want to like kind of cut off all the sources of stress.
Sure.
Go into a different space. But the way you do that is if you're a body type, you're shutting down your intuitions, or if you're a heart type, you're shutting down your emotional core, and kind of find, as you were saying, it helps you survive.
Right.
It's like, I need to get away from this for a moment.
Yeah.
And enneagram wise, it's this hard pivot into, a different space, which we'll talk about in a bit. But
right. And just to make sure it's said all over again, falling into this stress place is not the same thing as like the stress of being late to work. Falling into stress is when you're late to work for the 47th time and you know for sure that your boss is going to fire you and your mortgage is due tomorrow and also you have a baby on the way and also. Stress is about the big spaces where we actually move and like see the world differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a conscious process commonly to move into your stress space.
Right.
By the way, for 4s and 5s, 4s move out of withdrawn space into more earning reactive space, and 5s move from withdrawn space into more aggressive, assertive space at 7. Just as a footnote there. I wanted to start with the ones in terms of, like, what are the tools for getting out of stress? Because nobody wants to create that shanty in their stress number. Your stress number is really helpful. It can help you survive. Nobody wants to live at the hospital, as it were.
Or at least nobody should want to live at the hospital.
Right. Yeah. There's that one doctor. He just sticks in his office the whole time. But
right.
No.
Right.
But having had this experience about watching my mom, she was in the hospital for over 6 months, and it's just a hard place to routinely be in that condition.
Yep.
So. Let's get you up, get you moving. What does it look like to get centered? Worth renaming. The point of the Enneagram is balance. It's to get centered. And one of the tools used is your stress number, but you can't live there. So what does it look like to move from stress into centeredness? That's what we're talking about today. So, it can't, a lot of Enneagram teachers do this. Biographically, I do know what it's like to fall into 4 space and to just not be able to get out, And I need to be reminded, okay, as the thinking repressed type that I am, I need to be reminded, here are some of the things that have worked in the past. Perhaps you can pivot and start to grab hold of those. And the two things that are really big, and these kind of overlap, is one is really trying to find the high side of 4 space. So what do healthy 4s look like? Since I'm in 4 space already, well, one thing that I know about healthy 4s is they have a robust vocabulary and understanding of their emotional life. Perhaps I should really focus on my emotions in healthy ways, understanding ways, introspective ways, and do some of that work.
Yeah.
And often that really does help me. As a 1, I process through action. I normally am stressed when the things I'm trying to build, achieve, and the rest aren't going well. And then I fall into that space of, it's the negative space of 4s. There's an envious side. There is a what's wrong with me side. And that can just be a little, that's a rut that you can just kind of get stuck in.
Right. There's a level of sort of self-obsession, there's a level of narcissism particularly at the unhealthy end of 4s.
Yep. My emotions become paramount. My emotions become the thing I am absolutely fixated on in stress. And getting out of that space, what does it look like to get out of that space? Well, actually, bringing a name to those emotions, understanding those emotions, seeing them in the big picture, those are also things 4s can do quite well.
Right. And I even think that, like, on this topic of emotion particularly, 4s are less likely to assign a value to their emotions, in the sense that, like, 1s coming from that place of, like, there are things that are right or wrong. There's systems that tell us what the rules are. There's ways to make things better, and if something isn't good, we should be working to make it better. 4s don't necessarily think about emotions in that way. That's why 4s can sit in grief. That's why they're comfortable with their sadness. Like, the negative parts of living are all part of living, and they don't assign a right or wrong kind of value to those emotions. And that is very different from the experience at 1.
That's an excellent word. Stop thinking about right and wrong for a minute. Start thinking about what's beautiful around you. That can be, where are the romantic things? Yeah. One of the things that ends up happening for me in 4 space is I step out of the work zone. It's a withdrawing move. It's a stopping move. I leave my spaces of improvement, and that can be real helpful in stress to just say, I need to disconnect from the activities and not judge myself, as you're kind of saying, like, not judging myself through the right and wrongness of this. Is it wrong to take a day off?
Absolutely not.
Like, you need to move well beyond that and get to a different spot. So the thing that really helps me on this front, and it's the second part of moving out of my stress number, is eventually I need to re-engage my body. But I often do that in very isolating ways. For me, it used to be running. My knee is no good anymore, and so I've started doing weightlifting. But that ends up being a very isolated task, and it's real refreshing. It's by myself. I can still do introspective work, but I'm re-engaging my body, and I'm sweating, and I'm feeling my body, and there's something deeply satisfying there. But real similar to cooking. I really enjoy cooking with music, often very melancholy music, which can be kind of living in 4 space. But I'm creating something. I'm doing it with my physical self, and I'm actually eating the things that I'm cooking. And all of these are very good for my soul in terms of moving me back into a place where I'm centered. And as a 1, that means my body center, my intuitive center. And those are avenues for getting there.
Right. Yeah, thinking particularly about these kinds of solitary activities that are available, that I would imagine that a lot of 1s find themselves in those kinds of activities, particularly when they're making this move from a place of stress back to a more healthy, more balanced, centered at 1. There's the solo activity, most people are not thinking during that time. The activity gives your body something to do and your brain something to just like sort of automate so that you have a little bit more space to process more reasonably. Like the unproductive thinking means that you can very easily get stuck in a spin out very easily with unproductive thinking. But when you engage your body in that way, then your mind automatically, it's the eureka principle. Your mind automatically starts doing things better. Like it's working better. And so that time that you get to spend in a little more introspection is not sitting in a dark room by yourself with headphones on. It's active. It's getting endorphins. It's giving you a comfortable space where you don't also have to contend with the voice that says you should be doing something. And you can start to really parse out some of that inner noise and what's actually going on the inside of Jeff, or insert one name here.
I think that's exactly right. I suppose maybe there's something going on here that when you shut down action as a one, the energy that was being poured into that goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
And one of the places it'll go is into your head.
Yeah.
And so actually, if you step away from action, as you were kind of saying, eureka principle, it's like, oh, there's actually this other space for energy and focus.
Yep.
I find that really helpful. So the step then is, what does it look like for me to move out of stress back into center? It's not forcing action again, because I wouldn't have fallen into stress if the action had been working.
Right. You had already tried forcing action. That's what got you to stress in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like getting home, as it were, is going to require doing the work to get there through a healthy path. Sometimes you have to go to the hospital, do the test, do the work, get the medicine, get sent home with the bill, and and then you get to go home. No, but there's things that you're going to acquire when doing the stress move that are really valuable, and finding them. That's how it works. So
yeah,
eventually you get back to the tasks. For me as a one, I get back to the tasks that make me feel like I'm grounded and centered and in the world. I'm doing my to-do lists. I'm looking at the things that I want to create and can self-assess through action. But getting there, re-engaging my body, that ends up I have to do all the process. So,
yeah. And I want to say, make particular mention of some of the other things that ones get at 4. We've done a lot of conversations about this topic before, but like you get a little bit more of a clear image of yourself, because 4s, being sort of naturally self-involved, they see themselves a lot. And 1s are often trying not to see themselves because that's inappropriate. And when you spend time with yourself, you can see yourself a little more clearly. You can see your actual emotions. You can see some of the ways that you've been heavily engaged with things that are not your responsibility. And it's okay if nobody does them, because that's kind of how the world works sometimes. Not everything is pristine, but that doesn't mean everything isn't beautiful. So you get that at 4. These are not, like, there's so many tools there that you can grab and put on your belt as you're working your way back into a place where you can see yourself more clearly. You have a clearer idea of what is going on emotionally. You have a better perspective on what is yours to do, and moving back into your body. Like these are all tools that you take along with you, so that when you come back home, you're not still neck deep in floodwater,
Never good to come home to floodwater.
Yeah, that'd be bad news bears.
It's a good metaphor, though. We had a sewer that backed up constantly. Yeah. Nothing worse.
And it happened
there's lots of things that are
a
worse.
couple of times. This is legit, like at your house, you had a sewer line that backed up in the basement, like at least once a year?
Yeah, it was once a year.
Yeah. You can fix the clog, but if you don't fix the line, you're planning on having it again next year.
Yeah.
And so coming back to center intentionally means you actually fix the line.
Yeah, there's a sermon illustration there for sure. You need outlets for all of your shit to get out of your house. This is, if you don't, it backs up, and then you're in trouble. Twos. Same story. Twos who are in the feeling center are shutting down their feelings, moving into 8 space. 8s are acting on their thinking, assertive types. On the negative side, 8s can be very self-protective and aggressive in being, defensive. Mm-hmm. What do you see there for
and also like you also get some like my way or the highway energy from 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that a lot of the things that we praise 8s for culturally, when 2s do it, they do not get that praise.
Right.
So you have a lot of that
because they're not. We're not expecting it from the 2 who have been so helpful.
Yeah, we're expecting. I'm only going to say words that are offensive if I finish that thought. So
you're establishing boundaries. What is the story with you?
You were supposed to take care of me when I didn't want to take care of myself. So there's 8s. It's really interesting doing these two next to each other with 1s and 2s moving to stress because 1s need some introspection. They need some self-involvement to get healthy and bring them back to a better place. And 2s need that as well, but they don't need it from the inside.
Yeah.
The thing that they get at 8 is the ability to say no, to say this is not mine, to set those boundaries. When 2s fall into that place where things are not going the way it should be and they can't get their lives together, like or a relationship breaks or whatever else happens for 2s to fall into 8, now they get the strength and the power to be able to say, this is my space and I can't let things inside of it that are not mine. Let me rephrase that. I won't let things inside of it that are not mine.
Yeah, right. I think the big part, the firm boundaries and saying, don't take advantage of me.
Yeah.
I think, and the self-defensiveness verbally is something I heard in your language. Like, I will actually tell you now how I'm feeling. That has not been a topic when I'm centered, but
right.
And it might even come out as, as 8s do. It might come out as shooting blanks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I even think that the idea of, so I don't think 2s have a problem with feelings. Mm-hmm. I think when they get to 8, they don't have to tie their thoughts and their actions to their feelings anymore. Which, if we flip the script here, 8s, this is something that 8s struggle with. They believe that they are entirely objective, but it's really that they think they can change the world to suit them, to suit the way they see it. Mm-hmm. When 2s move into this, when 2s fall into this place, they get the opportunity to start making decisions and moving in the world without it being tied to someone else, without it being someone else's need or even their own emotional need. I want this thing. It's not about my feelings. I am going to do this thing.
What I'm hearing there, I can see a 2 who has strong relationships with more withdrawn types, going into 8 space, and then they just have a huge highway in front of them at that point where it's like, no, I'm going to move now.
Yep.
Emerging in their 8 space. Mm-hmm. 2s who have relationships with assertive types, with aggressive types, it's kind of a different thing at that point.
Yeah.
Where when the energy comes up, then it's confrontational.
Yeah. And requires the energy of staking your claim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the withdrawn types, the 2 is just going to have to pull them down the road. This is where we're going. You guys need to shut up and get in the car.
Yeah. Or I'm leaving without you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Which can even be better.
That can actually be a really big thing about twos, is like planting the flag in a relationship to say, this is what needs to happen. Either you come with me or we're not going to have a relationship anymore. Which is something they do not get in average to unhealthy two space.
Yeah. You can kind of shut down your feeling center
Exactly.
again so that you can move. But again, shutting down your feeling center, if you're a two in a relationship with an aggressive type, then it's going to be confrontation.
Right.
And now you have the energy and drive to kind of have that fight.
Mm-hmm. And advocate for yourself.
Yep.
And yeah.
I assume twos who are in a relationship with other reactive types, the other reactive types are just going to react to this new person that has emerged.
This is different. I don't know what to do now. Let's talk it out.
Oh, okay. You're really pissed off. Well, let's, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Which is also part of what the two needs at 8.
True.
Like we make space for the 8s in our lives, people. That is just reality. We make space because the 8s are going to take it up whether we want them to or not. 2s always diminish themselves in order to make space for others, and falling into 8 means they can start making space for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the independence that comes.
Yeah,
with becoming assertive in that space. Mm-hmm. It's good.
And so these, like all of this activity, this action, this quick thinking, this decisiveness is an amazing quality that 8s just carry around with them. And some of us are like, how? Where do you get? Is there a store for this? Like, did I miss a class in school? Mm-hmm. Where did you get your decisiveness? And 2s, like picking some of that stuff up, it brings them back to their center. It gets them to a place where they can actually distinguish their feelings from someone else's, where they can see the people that are abusing power, where they can recognize how someone might be taking advantage of them emotionally, or someone else. They can see the places where subjectivity is being abused by others. And moving back into that space gives them the power to do what they're naturally good at, which is taking care of other people.
Yeah, and that's the move back to center. Mm-hmm. You should be establishing boundaries both for yourself and for others.
Yep.
But 2s have a hard time establishing the boundaries mostly for themselves. Mm-hmm. But in so doing, you give yourself much more leverage when you move back to center to do what you do naturally, which is I care for other people. That's how I find my place in the world.
Right. And acknowledging, and like there is that space where they get to acknowledge that what they know is good for somebody else might not be something that somebody else wants or is going to get for themselves.
Yeah, get some perspective there.
And that's a point where, here is where a line needs to be drawn, so that we aren't codependent anymore.
Yep. Yeah. Again, all of this with the goal of returning home, and for them, home is how can I get back into that spot where my emotional radar is out there, and I'm able to engage people at a feeling level first, which is your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm.
And to do what's mine to do, and not all the things, because that way people will love me.
Yep. Is what's mine to do, that feels like there is a relational element to that. There is also an action-oriented element to that as well. If you're in 8 space asking what's mine to do, that's what is that? I think we've talked about this in the past. It's a thinking repressed kind of question, or it's a question for thinking repressed numbers.
Yeah.
Because they haven't paused to say, I really probably should think about where I'm aiming my one and only life.
Yep. Yeah.
Bing. All right. 3s. 3s are going to move to 9 in stress. Going to pick up some of can fall into the worst traits of 9s. which can
What
look
are you talking
like
about? There aren't bad traits of 9s.
can look like inaction, slothfulness. Some passive aggressive problem solving can emerge.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that we have in spades over here. Yeah.
However, there are other ways. So, what do 3s grab hold of at the high side of 9?
Yes. So 3s falling into stress. Nobody likes their stress place, but 3s like actively reject their stress place because part of their stress place is non-doing. Mm-hmm. And they can't not do. Like there's always stuff to do, right? And so the falling into stress, there's I feel like this might be entirely just my experience, but I feel like seeing 3s, like it's a little bit harder of a fall into the stress, and so the picking up of things there can sometimes be more of the unpleasant things at 9 than it is because 3s are trying to be successful, to put forward excellence and praiseworthiness in all of their areas. And when you aren't in the spotlight, that means nobody can see what you're doing.
Yep.
And like 9s are intentionally pulling back from the spotlight. The 9 place for 3 is, like you said, it's like there's some passive aggressive problem solving, but I think there's also a strong level of pulling your influence away from things that you know are going to break.
Yeah.
Pulling yourself out of spaces where you have held the success of the organization, the group, the whatever on your shoulders for so long. And when you hit that breaking point where you can't solve these problems anymore, where people are not looking at you as the extinguisher of the fires, then you just like pull. Atlas shrugs. Like, sorry, I couldn't help myself. Like it's essentially stepping out of the way so that the thing can fail without you. And at its worst, that can look like you removing all influence you have and then later explaining why it's broken. Like you can basically say, here are all the problems, and I'm not here anymore, so it's obviously you. So there's still this attention-centric way of pulling away your energy. But you can also step back in a way that says, I can't fix this for everyone else, and if it fails without me, then it needs to fail.
Yeah, that can be. So, of all things, I'm working on our affect group stuff right now on the book. But the detachment is legit for 3, 6s, and 9s when things are going badly in the group or in the spaces that they're creating. We've talked a lot about 9s, plugging all the holes with their fingers in the dam so it doesn't erupt. Hadn't thought about that with 6s and 3s, but that is exactly what they're doing. They have the radar for, no, we need to maintain the level of success. We need to maintain the level of safety for 6s.
Yep.
And I think that's correct. Sometimes I think for 3s, at least in terms of what I see, there's that in and of itself can be exhausting, even if you win the trophy at the end.
Yep.
So you do need to pull back and just say, I need a break. The thing that I routinely hear from, and this is just one of those places 1s and 3s are real similar. When 1s step into 4 space, it's stepping into a withdrawn space. And so is this okay that I'm not working anymore? 3s ask exactly the same kind of question.
Yeah.
For a different reason. They're also stepping into withdrawn space when they move to 9. And is it okay that I'm not doing all the things anymore? Is also something on their mind. Yeah. And really what that's saying is I don't feel centered right now.
Right.
I've stepped off the stage.
Yeah. And almost even like I would suggest that space for 3s falling into 9 is so confusing. Like it's not even necessarily like asking the question, but it's not really knowing that is the question because that space is really disorienting. 3s who are self-assured and like They can so quickly and easily pivot to like make the things look good. They can pivot in real time to become the version of themselves that other people will see as excellent. And when they step into 9 space where there isn't that kind of pivoting, that is hugely disorienting.
Right. For lack of a better terms, it feels like a life hack, but I don't think it's wrong for 3s to see stepping off stage and doing some yoga by yourself is an achievement.
Right.
And even if you just tell yourself that, I don't think that's the worst in terms of you are stepping into a space where you can embrace the calm, elevate your body, allow the refreshment that comes, in terms of being off stage to be the win for this moment, especially because nobody else sees it, but you see it.
Right.
And that needs to be part of the inventory of your rhythms, is you being in touch with your own body and emotions. You can also kind of get into your emotional life in those spaces sometimes.
I mean, it gives you space to do the things that you were putting aside before. Like you can't see your own emotions if you're constantly saying, "Oh, I'll deal with this later." The mantra that 9s need to embrace, and this is one of the hardest things I've ever said out loud to myself, is that later is not a point in time. And for 3s, later means that you are going to fall down. You're going to fall into a net, and now it is later. Now is the time when you need to process all of that stuff that you've been putting on the shelf to do later. Now is the time when you can't achieve, you can't accomplish, you can't do all of the things to succeed. So you have to spend the time with this other stuff that's been waiting for you.
Of all things, like some of the more productive rest that I see my wife do actually is what is it? It's unproductive doing.
Yeah.
But it is something that's it's engaging her body in some ways.
Right.
Thinking
about Kelly in particular, she creates a tremendous amount of art when she is centered.
Right.
When she is stressed and creating art, it is because she has to get this done in order to not fail at the thing that she's putting on at the end of the month. And now it's not like she's not comfortable with it. It's just slapping paint on something and moving on. But when she's in a good place, the unproductive doing is sort of natural for her, and she can just keep making more small pieces, like little 5x5 squares, and like funny sayings on a piece of wood, like all of these things that are, it's just sort of like spinning out. It's still good, but it's not like high art.
Yeah, it's restorative in nature for the most part, which is exactly what high side of your stress number ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
And she does actually a good job of not really needing a ton of acclaim,
right,
for that sort of stuff,
right?
And
that is one of the great things that you can get at 9 is the idea that like I am going to create this thing so that I can be proud of me, and I don't really care what other people think about it.
Right.
I don't ever want them to tell me they don't like it, but I don't care what other people think about it because I'm proud of it.
Right. Of all things, I'm going to kick myself and move back on this. It's actually when she comes out of that space, when she comes out of I'm doing these activities that aren't accomplishing a lot, but they're doing something for me. Mm-hmm. When she comes out of that space, it's when she turns and says, "Hey, have you seen all the work that I did on X downstairs?"
Yeah.
Which for her, in essence, it's non-productive doing. It's getting away from the productive doing she is always doing in her life. Mm-hmm. But moving back into centered space is simply inviting somebody to say, "Hey, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for reorganizing, the laundry table."
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think you also get into spaces where instead of trying to be the best at big things instead of trying to like win your job or a lot of the spaces where threes are trying so hard to succeed, and particularly the spaces where it broke and they couldn't reframe, they couldn't fix, they couldn't pivot and push them into stress anyway. Like those spaces are less important, and you can take the small wins.
Yeah.
Yes, things are not going well at my job right now, but because of the amount of time I spent just doing something else, I can actually see, none of this is stuff that I can influence in any way, but I can rearrange the laundry room and get the people who use the laundry room to recognize that for me.
Yep. Two other quick things on 9 space. It seems like threes can grab hold of past tools, which they normally don't use, but those can be very helpful in terms of getting centered, reminding yourself, of some of the, what you call them, like the trinkets of memory that you have, kind of stabilize you. And second, I don't know if this works, but the ability to see other people's perspectives would, I imagine, be a tool that threes can find at 9 space.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not often on the table.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. For average to unhealthy threes, the only perspective that matters is the one that makes me look good. And when you branch away from that and like perhaps you fell into your stress place, but you need to get something there to help you be a more healthy, better centered, balanced person. You can grab onto that thing that says other people's perspectives are valid. Sometimes they're wrong, but that doesn't mean they're not valid. And considering the world outside of yourself is an okay place to spend some time in.
Yeah. I suppose it's the case that on that front, the present moment also opens up in 9 space for threes. Threes have past tools that address future problems. You move into 9 space, the present opens up.
Right. I'm struck by a memory of an episode of Parks and Rec with, I can't remember, Amy Poehler. I almost said Leslie Knope, but it's like, no, that's the wrong name. The team just accomplished this great, big, huge, praiseworthy thing, and the bosses have said, "Great, we're looking forward to what you do next." And the person, the very clearly a 3 who is doing all the things all the time and is very good at all of the things, she has no ideas. She's empty. And she tries to sort of like trick all of her friends into helping, like, let's come up with the next big thing, and they're all just waiting for her to give them her idea because they know that she's gonna take the wheel anyway, and she has nothing, and she won't rest because she's so freaked out that she doesn't know what she's doing next, and so she has to get locked into a room where she can, like, essentially, like, someone forces her to go to sleep, like, you're locked in this room, and I'm not leaving until you've slept. And she sleeps for like 5 hours and then explodes with new growth and creativity.
Sure.
Like just she doesn't even need that much time in her stress place. She just needs to embrace it, and then she can move on with her life.
Yeah. Eureka moment again. That's funny. All of this being that once you've done the work in 9 space to be present, get off stage, to engage your body. I think a lot of threes, like, really the exercise side of threes, especially exercise that might be more walking in environments, like walking outside and where there's lots of beauties surrounding you in the calm of nature and the rest. These are those refreshing things. They allow you to move back into your center, where you can deal with other people's emotions coming at you and the relationships you have. They're then translated into action.
Yeah. I think about the exercise without goals.
Yeah, sure.
Like, if your goal is to swim, then swimming is exercise. If your goal is to beat your previous time at these certain amount of laps, then your exercise is a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
And from a 9-ish perspective, just swimming is exercise. Just walking around a lake is exercise.
Yep.
Hiking all the 14ers, that's something different.
Of all things, just I do apologize for just bringing up my wife and as
Yeah,
illustrations,
cool.
but the rhythm is so obvious here that she does exercise, but it's off stage. It's not in her work environment. It's not with anyone that she has responsibility for. She has massive responsibilities. Her exercise, however, remains social. And she does like dance classes or bike classes. It's with other people who she really enjoys. So there is the physical element, but there's also the social element that is there. And I feel like this is what we've said both with the 1s and 2s, that in your stress number, you are still pulling some of your intelligence center into that spot as the bridge, you know, to get back. So, so that's why I was saying with 1s in terms of cooking, it's still a very physical activity and I'm accomplishing something.
Right.
And I suppose that's what I see with her. And that may also be a subtype thing, you know, in terms of she's just much more social.
Sure.
But bang. But moving back into your heart center. This is the home for the 3, as well as the 4. Want to talk about 4s?
But they don't really leave their heart center in stress,
I guess
right?
It's true. This is where we get to talk about there's 2 numbers that are going to be different here.
But they both display a principle that is also really important, which we've talked about a little bit. I think 4s and 5s are going to allow us to really dive into the difference between your energy pointed inward and your energy pointed outward.
Well, I think that's where we're at.
Yep.
Talk about that. With 4s, both 4s and 5s are internally referenced numbers. Both of them, when going into their stress number, do not leave their intelligence center. So 4s are going to move into 2 space in stress, but 2s are also heart types.
Right.
But 2's energy goes outward.
Right.
Is externally referenced. Yeah. So that's really the pivot, is getting out of your own emotions and into the emotions of others is apparently really core to the 4's stress move.
Right.
So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that painting with a broad brush like that is the only stroke. It's the move from being very concerned about your own interior life and whether or not you are presenting truth, advocating for authenticity, for seeing beauty in the places where other people don't see it, that these are all good and important things. And when that stuff kind of breaks, when 4s can't find themselves, can't find, like when they move into these stress places, they get the energy shifts when they move to 2, because now it's about other people. Now it's about what other people need from me, what other people, like how I could serve other people, how my energy can be poured out toward others instead of toward myself. And when 4s find themselves in this place, it can often be really messy because they're not naturally as good at picking up on other people's stuff as 2s are. So it's oftentimes that they are helping in ways that they want help, not how other people want it.
Right.
This is another great place where the golden rule doesn't work. Don't do for others what you would have them do for you. Do for others treat other people how they want to be treated.
Low side here for me appears to be like the 4 is serving, and they're doing so with a really crappy attitude, you know, and ensuring that everyone knows how much they are doing for you. Mm-hmm. All you worthless POSs.
Yeah. I also think the shoring up favors issue can become very prominent, particularly in the unhealthy, falling into stress at 2, because 4s now surround themselves with the people who are on their side because a lot of their stressors are going to be about emotions and relationships because they're still in the heart center. When they move to 2, now they are surrounding themselves with an army of people who will back them up because they're going to win the relationship.
Yeah. That's well said.
Yeah. I can't give this example. It's a really good example, but I can't give it without the person who is guilty, who showed it to me, knowing that it's about them. So I'm just going to apologize ahead of time. I don't think we've ever spoken about this out loud, but it's a really good example. I know someone who has, in those places of deep and unhealthy stress, who has tried to get their stressor, the other person, removed from their community by getting their community behind them.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
So person A is the 4 in stress because of a terrible relationship, and they want person B, the other person, to be excommunicated from their community. And so person A, the 4, surrounds themselves with all the people who love them and say, this person isn't allowed here anymore, right? That is a deeply unhealthy behavior you can pick up at 2 to help keep you alive.
I like the tag there that the 4 thinks that this is what's required to keep them alive in that situation is we need to ostracize.
Yep. I need to protect my space, so you have to leave it.
Yeah. Bet there's some healthy attributes.
There
to pick up at too.
absolutely is some healthy stuff. Literally, the exact same issue can be really healthy.
Yeah, talk about it.
The idea of pivoting from only internal reflection to starting to see other people, to putting yourself aside for a second and saying, what does this person need from me?
Yep.
Not what do I have to give them, but what do they need from me?
Yep. It's gonna say it can be overwhelming. One's own emotional life can be overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And there's an exit door here. Let me just set my emotional life to the side for a minute. I'm going to put that same energy, we're talking a lot about energy, into somebody else without reference to myself for a minute.
Yep.
And that can save you from all the crap that you're dealing with when you're centered in your emotional life.
Yep.
Again, safety net there.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we already talked about this with 1s as well, the idea of like getting into your body.
Right.
4s, part of what 4s struggle with is the unproductive doing, same as 9s and 5s. Like there's a lack of doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And part of what the space at 2 does is also get them into their body doing things. And in a similar way that 1s get that eureka moment, like that, the eureka moment is kind of presented when you stop spending all of your mental energy focusing on yourself. You move into a space where you're doing something for other people. You're extending your antenna outward, and you get a clearer perspective on how the world works and what your place in it is.
Yeah,
and that's the fundamental thing that brings 4s back to center, is that when you look outside of yourself, it's easier to see what your place in the world is.
That's it. Yeah, for the 1s and the 3s, withdrawn space is the solution. For 4s, withdrawn space is part of the problem.
Exactly.
If you're feeling stressed. And so getting out of the introspective withdrawn space into an externally referenced space, also a present-oriented space. Yeah. Getting out of the past, getting into some present action is something you can pick up there too.
Yeah, yeah, and the act of serving other people, the act of even just asking questions, even just being in a space where you aren't normally, which is about other people, you can see the world a little more clearly because you're also like in home. You're usually looking at the world through a what is my place in this lens. which is still a self-focus. And when you start to look outside of yourself and see, oh, this person looks so happy, but these are the things that they're lacking. It's like, oh, this is actually not the idyllic kind of life I thought it was. And it means I am not as much outside of it as I thought it was.
Right.
There's a lot of this sort of relational energy that just shifts in really beneficial ways when you pick up good tools of looking outside of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, what I'm hearing there is like when serving others, something new may emerge for the four as they see themselves in a new and different light that becomes more fodder for them to self-actualize, as it were.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, when I invest in these ways, it exposes more of myself.
Right.
Which allows me to see myself more, which allows me to move back to center.
Right.
That's going to be real similar to fives, just as we're talking about in terms of...
You just switch over to the head and not the heart.
It's interesting. We'll wrap up with the fours. The jump in, turn on the broody music. Like...
Yeah, it's great.
Go buy that book, that will actually tap into... I have a four friend who really gets into 18th century like medical disease books. Like these are the terrible things that are taking place in the 18th century Europe. People are dying in awful ways. She's just really into this and how that gets exposed in doctors' journals and the rest. Pick that book up and just love the hell out of it. This is moving back to center.
Yep, it's true.
I'm sure there's countless examples because for every four, there's something very, very different that makes them unique in terms of here's the thing that I do.
Yep.
Push in.
Yeah.
So funny. All right.
We're going to pause here and pick up with the fives and the rest of the types on our next episode. If you've liked this or any of our other work, we'd love for you to rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. This helps our work become more visible for people who might be looking for ways to see themselves better. The best thing you could do would be to share this with someone you care about, and maybe begin a dialogue about what trust looks like in your life. You can connect with us on Instagram at Around the Circle Podcast, or find us at aroundthecircle.org, where we have links to our Patreon and info about our online and in-person gatherings. He's Jeff Cook, and I'm TJ Wilson, and who you aren't isn't interesting.